Oh, well everybody, the shop is in pretty rough shape. The problem is that I had a storage unit that I was renting and had been paying for years since I vacated my television repair shop years ago, and I just didn't want to part with some of the stuff. I actually started with a large unit. I did get rid of some of the stuff and sized down to a smaller storage unit, but I'd been paying that, and every month I was paying for it, and I just got fed up with it. I kept saying, one of these days I'm going to get around to cleaning it out, and then I just decided, I'm just going to do it and deal with everything later. So unfortunately I had to dump a lot of stuff down here. This is just the tip of the iceberg, but that's a solid maple butcher block top for another workbench that I owned. I got two of these two-door metal cabinets. I've actually got one in front of the other just to store them for right now, but that's basically that style metal cabinet like I got with the Wells Index. So I've got two more of those. That one in the front's in pretty good shape. The one in the back's kind of beat up. And then I actually own a fourth one that's in another garage. So but that's another story for another time. Point is that I've got to really get serious about organizing things down here. I worked on the Vernon lathe today, started disassembly of that. I really would like to get that down here and set up and running so I have one good working lathe. I mean, I have the Atlas, but I still haven't fixed the bracket that supports the lead screw, so I can't do threading on that, or feed for that matter, because on that lathe the lead screw does threading and is also the feed. So anyways, so I did want to try and get something done on the Sipp tonight, so I'm going to look at that Quill assembly. Alright, so last time I had messed with the Quill assembly, I had cleaned it up some, and I had gotten to this point here where this moves like this, but this doesn't want to seem to come out. I cleaned that all up right there because I thought maybe that was what it was hanging up on, but I actually think now that what's happening is it doesn't want to push through. I think there's a bearing in here that it's pressed through. So this looks like another one of these funky thrust bearings, and that's going to come off. By the looks of it, the only way that's coming off is this way. So this is going to slide off this way, which means this is going to have to slide off this way. So what I did was I grabbed my small spanner wrench here, and that was actually pretty loose already. So I think if I take this off, it just unscrews. I'm curious how many ball bearings they ended up using inside this Quill. Well, that's some fine threads on that thing. A lot of them too. Alright. That slides off. Okay. I actually don't see anything down there. Where the heck is the bearing? Huh. Is this... I didn't see nothing like that. Let's see more. Get a little pinhole right here, but that we got a feeling is just for oil. Alright, so I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to get a little rough with this thing. Alright, so I got this wood block on the floor, and I think if I just hold the Quill and bang this down on this, I think I might be able to pop this shaft out. Yeah, maybe not. I'm going to move some and then it's stopped dead. Can't tell if that's moving. I need to take a measurement. Where's my, my old varnish right here. Let's use those. So let's see. Right now, 1.260. Oh, that slipped so much I obviously don't need to measure to see that that moved. Ah, she's off. Sweet. So there are no bearings inside that. This just runs inside that shaft and is oiled by oil being periodically squirted into. Well, that's not actually a hole. How the hell are you supposed to lubricate this thing? Alright, so now I gotta get this thrust bearing off of here. Well, the thrust bearing has a oil hole right there. So that can be oiled. Heck was that? This is a very interesting thrust bearing. Might have to reuse that. It's very dirty in there. I'll see what the bearing guys say. Alright, I did one last thing before I'm going to quit for tonight, and that's I took this out of the parts washer and then I hit it with the foaming engine degreaser to finish cleaning it up. A little bit of paint that's left on there now, I'll handle that with the mechanical abrasives, either the 3M discs or the wire wheel, depending on how well. This has a lot of really tight little contours and everything, so I'm probably going to have to rely more on the cupped wire wheel for this job. But I want to get this primed and painted, because I think it's a lot easier to put that on now than it is once the head is on. The only thing I'm not sure of is whether or not I can get the quill in later. I don't know. It's gotta figure out exactly how I want to attack this. I might not want to put the head on just yet because I might have trouble getting this, getting these shafts in position. I might have to wait until I get all my bearings in and take a look at it then and see how I'm going to attack this. Hey everybody, it's been a couple weeks since I've been working on the Sipp drill press. I was trying to work out some bearing issues, and I've also been doing some work on the multi-hole's gone. I've been doing some work on the Oliver tractor and getting some of that video up. There were a lot of requests for me to get back to that project. There were a lot of requests for me to get back to several projects that unfortunately I haven't had time to get back to. And I do still want to try and get some work done before the snow flies on the International Harvester 350 utility tractor steering gear. That, if you've been watching that video series, you'll recall that someone had welded the steering box to the top of the tractor, and it's supposed to be able to unbolt. And if it was able to unbolt, I would have had that off a long time ago and would have had it on the bench where I could work on it easily. And anyways, I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and grind those welds off and see if I can't get that box off so that I can get that steering box down here in the basement and have it as a winter project. And then that way hopefully I can revisit putting all that back together in the spring. on the Sipp drill press, the holdup has been this bearing, this multi-part bearing. Several people have left comments talking about this bearing. I do know that there are places that still make bearings like this. The problem is this type of bearing today is only used in really specialized industries and machinery, and for that reason this is a very expensive bearing. There's also a company that I have the name of that will actually take these components and regrind them, and then what you end up doing is you end up actually putting oversized balls in here to make up for the extra clearance that you end up with because of the oversized bearing, because of the fact that it's ground. Again, very expensive, expensive being a relative term. Hey, if this is a crucial part in your oil drilling rig, you know, or a specialized pump in the industry you're in, hey, you know, money might not be as big a factor. But in my 1916 Sipp drill press restoration, yeah, it's a factor. So I was going to try to replace this multi-part bearing with a single bearing, and I discussed why this bearing is made the way it is, that it needs to be able to handle axial and radial thrust. So what I was going to do was I was going to put in an angular contact ball bearing, which is a type of ball bearing that's supposed to be able to handle both of those types of loads. The problem is, when I look down at all the standard sizes for those type of bearings, I believe the sizes I was faced with were like 70 millimeter OD or 80 millimeter OD. For me to put an 80 millimeter OD bearing in this cup, I would have to actually put this in the lathe and shave this wall thinner. Now that wall's already kind of thin, so that kind of negates that. That ID on that bearing, on the 80 millimeter, would actually fit over this, but it actually wouldn't be a press fit. It would actually be a little loose, and I would have to probably use maybe some sort of a locking agent to make that not spin inside the bearing. So that's a problem there. The next size down, I believe, was an OD of 70 millimeter. I might be wrong on these numbers, but believe me, I checked this out 7 ways to Sunday. 70 millimeter is going to be loose in here, so I'd have to fashion some sort of a ring or band to make up the space in here. Then the ID on that, I believe, was 35 millimeter. A little too big. This is a little too big for that. So then I'd have to put this in the lathe and turn this down. Now there's plenty of wall thickness here, so I'm confident I could do that and it would be okay. But the end result is I do all that and I'm still not 100% sure whether or not it would do as good a job as if I just put this back together again. I know I had put this together already and I didn't like the sound of it, but I decided I'm just getting to the point where this is holding me up. I don't want to start putting too much more money into the thing. It's not going to be a drill press, as far as I know right now, it's not going to be a drill press that I'm going to use often. You know, hopefully we'll have the milling machine down here and I'll probably be able to do drilling on that. So it was kind of a novelty to get this thing going anyways. So today I stopped at my bearing supplier, bearing specialty, and I picked up brand new ball bearings. I had originally replaced only a few because it appeared to be missing a few, and reused the other ones. Now I'm going to put this back together with all new fresh ball bearings. The other thing, what I didn't notice when I was assembling this bearing the first time, and what I've noticed now, and I don't remember if I mentioned this in a video already, but alright, I'm going to zoom the camera in now. Alright, so the first time I put this together and gave it a run and didn't like the way it sounded, I was not aware of the fact that this inner race part, or whatever you want to call it here, there's actually two different diameters here on this wall thickness right here. This is significantly wider than this. Let's see. I'm just doing an eyeball, roughly eyeballing it, and it looks to me like that's 50. Well, it looks to me like it's about 50 thousandths difference in width between this one, this right here, and this right here. So I'd be willing to bet it's imperative for me that when I put this back in, I put it in the right way. So I've got to try and figure out, because I didn't notice how this was when it came out, which way it was facing. So I've got a little bit of a problem there. I've got to figure out which way this goes in. And one of the determining factors is going to be how far this sits down on this collar right here. In other words, how far this is pressed down onto here. Now, when this was turned, when this was made at the factory, this shaft, right here, there's a relief cut right here. And I noticed that if I look on the inside of this bearing, I can actually see what almost looks to me like a difference in the markings on the inside of this. It almost seems to me as though quite possibly this end right here with the thin part was facing down. But I don't know that for sure. The other clue I have as to how this went together is on this side of the bearing. I'm going to get a close-up of this. Hopefully this is focusing on this, but if you look at this side, you can actually see these little light ghost marks. They almost look like little lapping marks when this was actually, I think, made and was ground at the factory. But it's a little visible when I rock it this way. You can see the light playing on those lines. If you look at this side is pretty much a complete absence of that. And in fact, there are lines indicating that something was rubbing this as it went around. So this was rubbing on something as it ran. This wasn't. So that's the other clue I have. And then I don't know if you can see on the inside here, but you could see those little marks there on that edge, right up to this edge. And if you flip it over, there's kind of an absence of those marks over here. And here, I'll just give you, you can clearly see that this is thinner than this. Alright, I've been working at, basically just been looking at these parts closely, thinking about it logically and trying to determine how this goes together. And I'm still not 100% sure, but this is what I'm going to go with. I know that the pulley goes in like this, and it's supported by this bearing on the bottom here, which sits in this cup that drops down the side like this. This whole bottom is wide open, so the spindle comes right out of here and there's nothing down there. This top is also very open. Matter of fact, I remember when I initially put this together, I was concerned about dirt and stuff being able to get down in here. Well, since this is wide open like this, one of these sides on this piece basically sits like this and doesn't really have anything to rub up against. So that's why I think this side with these marks on it that look like they're original marks from the grinding process faces up. Which begs the question, what is this, or what did this rub up against? Well, when this is in here like this, the only thing I could figure is that possibly it was rubbing up against the inside of this, like that. Now normally that shouldn't happen because it should be suspended up here by the clamping effect of the balls in there. But this was loose and this whole thing was loose. So I think that's what happened. So this loosened up, allowed this to drop down, and allowed this to rub on here. The thing that bothers me about that theory is that I don't see any indication of rubbing on the inside of this piece. I also am not positive which side is which on this. They look identical, so I don't think it's going to make a difference, but neither side has indications that it was rubbing on anything. The other thing I thought about was if I put this in, this way, because this is a skinnier part, it actually is going to sit lower. So the bearing is going to be down low like this, and actually have to be held up by the balls. But maybe that's how it's supposed to be. I don't know. Not to mention the fact that this is actually goes in like this, upside down. So I don't know. To add insult to injury, I measured the dimension from the shoulder here to the top, and lo and behold, it is longer than the dimension from here to here. Meaning that this does not get pushed all the way down to the shoulder. So I'm going to put this back on and just have the top edge flush with the top edge of this, which I think is how I did it the first time. I don't recall if that's how it was when I took it apart. Might be able to review some of my own videos going back a ways and see. Well, anyways, let me throw this together and see what happens. Well, I tried it the way I thought it went, and I still really didn't like the way it felt when I put it together and pushed this ring down. And so I reversed it to see if that made a difference. And it still does the same thing, which I can show you when I spin this. I don't know if you see it, but it's coming to a stop. And when it does spin, it spins kind of roughly. There's definitely, right there, it's tightening up right there. Gets past that point, frees up, comes around, and there's a feeling of roughness in there. And those are all brand new balls, so it's got to be the races. I'm going to have to get the angular contact bearing, modify this, because I can't reuse this. I've tried a couple different things. I even tried leaving a ball out, thinking maybe I had one too many balls in there, because as you recall, when I took this apart, there were definitely some missing, or certainly seemed like there was some missing. This was very sloppy. This was able to move up and down this way, and it seems to me it shouldn't have been able to do that. I don't even have this ring on here, so I'm not even really putting a load on this yet, and I can't get this to run smoothly. I've squirted oil in there, and it's still horrible. It even seems to me, it almost seems to me like this doesn't even run true. No, it's not. Huh. Maybe I should tighten this down. Make sure that that's seating everything. I have doubts that that's going to make any difference, though. I think the problem is that large scored groove on the inner race. I think that's where my problem is. I could be wrong, but Now, same problem. I don't have this pressed in there all the way, but I've just got this set up so I can do this. And you can hear it still sounds awful. Good night.